For this video, Dutaku cautioned me about giving in to temptation to exercise better temperance. I told him that it's really a temporary affliction anyway. My temperament is beside the point and rarely becomes tempestuous. So if you have the temerity tempting you to listen in, double check your tempo and clear your plates, tamers, cause it's time to temp up. And I'm just going to put this down here, and we're good to go. Greetings, everyone. This is the Hipster Snek, welcoming you to the Airborne Archipelago in the worlds of mons-game's MMORPG, simply titled Temtem. Born from a Kickstarter project and Crema, a team of people who really seem passionate about what they do, founded in Spain, Temtem debuted in early access form through Steam and the Humble Store in January this year. The full release is scheduled sometime in 2021, including releases on the Nintendo Switch, Xbox One, and PS4 consoles. I was even part of some of the early stress tests in the game and have had a hard time putting it down since I started digging into it. And if you enjoy monster games, I imagine your experience may be similar to my own. So let's dig in and find out more. Like most games of the genre, Temtem begins with you making your character and shuffling them off into the wide world of the aptly named Airborne Archipelago. It's a series of floating islands that constitute the world. This is already cool because I love customizing my avatar, as I've said many times. Sadly, this game doesn't have a proper one-for-one for my lovely red coif, but I was able to track down a rough approximation at a fashion store a few towns in. Hipster glasses included and everything. Look, I wear them ironically. But then we meet our local absent-minded professor who gives us one of 3 Temtem to start our journey off, as our annoying rival Max harasses us the entire time. The starters are Huchik, the mental-type axolotl thing Temtem, Smazy, the melee-type monkey Temtem, and the objectively correct choice of Crystal, the crystal-type turtle Temtem. You'll pick your starter, whereupon Max will kick the ever-loving crap out of them because this game does not pull punches and give you stupid things like tutorials. You already know what you're in for, so you better be ready for it. I'm not joking about this either. I entered the rival match against Max, and before my Crystal could even act, Max immediately one-hit KOs her, and I'm just left standing there trying to parse what just happened. As a consolation prize, the professor was kind enough to give us 2i, a bird Temtem I immediately deposited in the storage system for something else at first opportunity, and thus my adventure began. After I ended up freezing the game 3 times or so by trying to open item boxes. Yeah, needless to say, the stress test uncovered a lot of bugs that have since been fixed, so if you pick this game up today, you'll probably have an easier start of it than I did. Graphically speaking, the game is an extremely colorful, vibrant world. The team went all in, giving it an anime-esque feel that makes the world really pop at a glance. The Temtem themselves are extremely pleasing to look at, with nice color combinations and quirky designs, most often reflecting fantasy elements of otherwise realistic creatures. Except Babawa. That one scares me in the existential sense. The world looks alive and energetic, from lush forests to ancient ruins to waterways, cities of all sizes, and more. I love just exploring around the world and seeing what I can find, and it's all so pretty. The human characters are very stylized and tend to have soft, rounded features, to say nothing of the pop culture references you'll find too. And no, I didn't edit that screenshot. You literally get to have a Temtem battle with Fry and Leela from Futurama. Did I mention I love this game? 'Cause I do. Sound-wise, this game is really awesome. I love the soundtrack with its strong rock and pop themes. The battle theme against Bel Soto, our group of antagonists for the hour, is a particular standout among them. But the overworld themes are shockingly chill and relaxed, and a welcome feature, I must say, as the battle themes tend to pick it up a bit and have a ping to serve as a starting bell to initiate combat. Actually, it's a weird thing to harp on, but I really like the basic sound effects in this game. They're all done in this really soft style where even the text crawl sound effect is kinda ambient and pleasing. I'm not really a believer in ASMR, but even so, #oddly satisfying, I guess. That weirdness aside, let's talk about the gameplay. This might sound a little bit like copy and pasting from last week's video, but in a Mons game of this sort, you divide time up between your overworld and combat. In the overworld, you move around, speak to NPCs and fellow players alike, remember, MMO, and curse the fact that you don't have whatever particular piece of equipment that will let you explore the direction you actually want to go. Dear Crema, why do you hate skates and climbing gear so much? Did climbing gear bite you all as children? I ask only out of concern, of course. Anyway, you also have a convenient menu, flush with handy shortcuts so both keyboard and controller controls control what control should control, intuitively. You can carry 6 Temtem in a party at any time and have 2, yes, I said 2, on point to lead any battle as the battles come. Each Temtem is also outfitted with 4 moves you can customize at any time you're not presently in battle from any move they learned over the course of their lives, so you can adjust as you go. Additionally, each Temtem has an ability to call their own, and I swear to whatever deity presides over this archipelago, if I run into another duo who both have the camaraderie ability, I'll attack their tamer because sweet mother have mercy. That aside, you can also opt to give your Temtem pieces of equipment, each with various functionalities to tweak them just that little bit more before you're ready to go out into the world. Combat, meanwhile, is done almost exclusively in a 2v2 format. You'll only be forced into one fight if you want to call the aforementioned absolute one-sided curb stomp of an encounter a fight, wherein you'll have less than 2 Temtem on your side of the field. Likewise, most wild encounters, but not all, will have 2 Temtem opposite your own, though exceptions do occur with occasionally only having 1. All Temtem have 1 or 2 elemental typings, each with several strengths and weaknesses compared to other elemental typings, doubling or having the dealt damage depending on type dominance. I bring all this up specifically because the superficial similarity to Pokemon is about to break completely. In combat, each Temtem has an energy pool they can cast from, with stronger attacks requiring some number of warm-up turns before activation, cooldown turns, or larger energy requirements than others. Thus, you can't just learn the objectively best moves and steamroll the game. You'll actually need to strategize, and since the 2v2 setup make the game handle more in lieu with traditional RPGs, it matters even more. If you don't have the energy to actually cast the move, you're going to end up casting from HP, which will actually hurt your Temtem, so you have to plan ahead. You can also have your Temtem forgo a turn in order to recharge some energy, but thankfully you will not suffer a colossal defensive weakness for having done so. And since most elementally superior blows will prove fatal, or very close to it, you'll hardly need the added handicap. Yes, for how cute the Temtem are on the surface, their battles are extremely cutthroat and exceedingly fast-paced, even in light of the turn-based combat, to say nothing of the fact that the interconnectivity between players is natively inbuilt into the game's core engine, allowing for both co-op and competitive play. This frenetic pace and incredibly robust combat will keep you engaged the entire time you're exploring this vast and ever-expanding world. You can even see the entire story campaign, start to finish, in co-op mode. But if you're the sort who once had fun and hated it, this game does give you the tools required to play the game in the competitive sense. I don't mean having a friendly PvP battle, that goes without saying. I mean play it like you're in a tournament and thereby share equal disdain for all fellow man. All Temtem have their base stats, the basic line that they'll have for that species, on top of single values, SVs, which are randomized upon the Temtem being generated, and training values, TVs, the stats that build up when you defeat enemies over time. Unlike that other game, Temtem just shows you these stats and gives you pretty much complete control over those training values, and some level of control over single values when it comes to breeding them, and the obligatory breeding for the best. Actually, all sarcasm aside, I really like the breeding system in Temtem because not only do I find monster eggs inherently endearing, but because the way Temtem evolve is quite a bit different than in most monster games. They evolve based on the number of levels since they were obtained, rather than at set level values. So, for example, any crystal, captured, bred, or your starter will only evolve after 30 levels of being with you, so breeding and training one up from your own from an egg can sometimes be a more worthwhile endeavor than trading or just capturing a high-level one. Also, it's worth mentioning, eggs are created and hatched on a real-time timer. Just set it in your party, get comfy, and wait it out. No need to run in circles like an idiot. Actually, many of the Temtem on my current party were added to my team in that fashion, and I actually took some time out to try to get better SVs just to see if I could pull it off, and what you see here are the results. So I've been gushing and praising this game so far, but I do feel the spirit of fair critique means that I do have to gripe about something. For starters, like all MMOs, Temtem has to eventually cross that uncomfortable question of its own long-term viability. But that's a hypothetical problem for a game that hasn't technically been fully released yet, so let's let that one slide for now. If it sounds like that's a bit of a sore spot, it's because it is. Monster Rancher had an MMO and we never got it for similar reasons. That aside, the game is, by design, a bit of a railroad. For instance, do you want water Temtem? Too bad. You need to beat the first dojo, no exceptions. Want fire Temtem? Sir, not appearing until Island 3. It causes an artificial aspect to the game's difficulty to form because there's just certain type combinations you won't be able to competently fend off until the game just gives you permission to do so. It kneecaps customization in the early game, meaning I was going around with only 3 or 4 Temtem, whereas the first dojo and the rematch against the contemptuous rival both sport a party of 6, including some that you don't have access to. I mean, I won both these fights, but that was only because it was a knockdown, drag-out brawl from start to finish, and the smallest misstep on my part would have sunk me. I mean, to some extent that is to be expected, but the only real issue I take with the game at this point is the fact that money is actually hard to come by and quite limited. Sure, there's things like the free Tem Society, which is both amusing and an option, but it fails to address the real issue that money is a real limited resource, but something you'll always need and want. The game expects you to be pushed to your limits and supplement it with consumable items, or to catch Temtem you'll need Tem cards. But I'm sure better answers will become available as the Temtem team at Crema have been receptive to fan feedback, and this is something that they have been told about. But again, that's mostly my nitpicking, and I actually had to stretch in order to reach some of those complaints. Truth of the matter is, Temtem is an amazing game, full of amazing monsters and the MMORPG aspects, despite my initial misgivings on account I tend to raise monsters solo, has actually had its perks, and I'm pleased that someone is showing single-handedly how having a lot of passion can evolve a genre far better than someone who simply has a lot of money. It's clearly designed and maintained by people who really love monster games, and are here to give the generation that grew out of Pokemon a game that they can really enjoy on both a casual, relaxed level and on that of a competitive one that doesn't talk down to its tamers. Oh, on that note, I should mention there is some mild cursing and some pop culture references that the littlest, tiniest baboos wouldn't really understand. But honestly, it was nice to have a game that wasn't afraid of being cheeky from time to time. One of my personal favorites being an instance where a lady you can meet fairly early on who's exasperated when you tell her that you're a tamer, as she works at the Temtemporium, the Temtem healing station and shop location in each town, and now she really doesn't like Temtem because she sees them all the time. That's legitimately comical. At the end of the day, should you get Temtem? Yes. End of statement. Buy Temtem, play Temtem, love Temtem. Temtem is a fantastic game and it deserves to be shared and played all the more. Temtem, 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 Temtem. This has been the Professor Snek, and thank you all for coming to my Tem Talk. If you enjoyed it, be sure to tap that like button to let me know. If you want more like this every week, hit those subscribe and bell icons so you'll never miss a one. Tell me what your favorite Temtem team looked like in the comments below. For more from me and my Tomo Bros, you can follow us at the Tomodachi Bros Review YouTube and podcast, our Tumblrs, Twitters, Instagrams, and more, all links available in every video description. If you want, you can even financially support my efforts via Subscribestar, and join us here every week of May for the merry month of Mons Games and more. And I will see you there.